Happy Sunday, everybody. Hope you're all enjoying the fresh start, new season of Bloomburrow. And I did compete in day 2 of the Arena Open, and that video will be coming out on Wednesday. And I'll try to get it posted a little bit sooner for members. If you'd like to join, you could watch it sooner. Also helps support me financially. And so thank you to those who are YouTube members. I appreciate you. And so every Sunday, what I like to do is I like to go over meta breakers, which are off meta picks that were successfully piloted into Mythic with above a 60% win rate for at least 50 games and with no MMR shenanigans going on. So we're going to start things off here with Mono White Control by Sokka, who went 52 and 25 for 68%. And we've got a bunch of we've got Select White Sun's Twilight for the Wrath. We've got the Lay Down Arms for some spot removal. Get Lost for instant speed against like the Mono Red Prowess and the Rakdos aggro. We've got Carrot Cake, which works really nicely with the Caretaker's Talent. Same with the Sanguine Evangelist, being able to kind of give you those card draws when you create those tokens. We've got the Archangel Elspeth, which then creates tokens as well. Beza can create tokens, but works really nicely with being able to blink it with the Eternal Wanderer. And we've got Virtue of Loyalty, which can create that token at instant speed to trigger the card draw off of Caretaker's Talent, as well as give you a pump. And then we also have the Sunfall. So this one not running the temporary lockdown that we sometimes see, only deciding to run 3 Wraths as well. And then we've got the Elegant Parlor in here. So this is a best of 3 list that was being run in best of 1 and was able to still do well in best of 1. So the Elegant Parlor is in here for the sideboard of bringing in the Imidane's Recruiter. You can also run this deck in best of 3. I think one of the standard challenge winners might have been this exact list. We've got the Sundering Gateway and such for removal of the temporary lockdowns in the side. Depending on how much you're coming up against Boros Convoke and Celestia Rabbits, you might actually want to bring in the temporary lockdowns from the side. But as is, this was performing well, at least for Sokka, on the best of 1 ladder. As far as the matchups go, it's good against the Rakdos aggro deck. It's good against Boros, both the Boros Convoke as well as the kind of Boros Tokens version of it, which is very similar to this, that runs the Urbrask's Forge with the Caretaker's Talent. You got to choose wisely on how you're using your Get Losts and such. But I think that you've got enough card draw that you don't need the Urbrask's Forge, and then you get the consistency of not having to bring in red. So I think also if you are going to be running this one best of 1, you could think about maybe replacing the Elegant Parlor since you don't need the red for the Imidane's Recruiter. Just a thought. But so good there. It's also really good against the Dimir deck, which is kind of like Dimir can either be mid-range or control, so it kind of varies. But this deck does pretty well against the control build specifically, and then fares relatively well against the Dimir aggro deck as well, depending on how well you can play your Sunfall around their counterspell. So that one is, it's better against the Dimir control list, worse against the Dimir mid-range list, but still okay. And then the real winner though for this one is it's really great against mono red. Being able to have the instant speed interruption while also the life stabilization kind of just extend out of their reach. The counter to this deck is Azorius Control, which is going for the mill plan and has the ability to shut down anything that can really target the Caretaker's Talent. Definitely puts a wrench into this whole strategy. So that'll be number 1. Oh, the other thing too I forgot to mention is I put up a poll every week, so if you would like to cast your vote, it'll be for which one I try to make time for to run the gameplay video. So this will be number 1 on the poll. Number 2 is 5-color Reanimator, and this is the one that I was saying, like, I haven't been able to do the meta breaker. I haven't been able to do the meta breakers for a little bit, and so this was the new archetype that has been doing very well on the ladder, and it currently is actually in the top 8, so I might cover it in my best of 1, best of 3 meta review tomorrow. But if I do, that one will probably be the Witch Reanimator build, which is not running the Atali, but is very similar strategy. So we're doing a lot of graveyard stuff with this, trying to cheese out some really awesome threats for cheap, right? So we've got the Squirming Emergence, which is kind of the bread and butter, which you return a non-land permanent from your graveyard with mana value less or equal to the number of permanent cards in your graveyard to the battlefield. So this is your enabler. We've got the mill, where you probably want to be doing the downtick on this on yourself. You might even want to do this for the just mill 15 on your own. Cruel Somnophage helps us enable the mill, and then we've got the Picklock Prankster, which helps enable the mill, and the Founding the Third Path. So we've seen some version of this deck for a while that is trying to do this kind of combo in Sultai. So the base is definitely blue, black, green. Seed of Hope also helps us with the mill. And then for our big game-winning threats, we have Portal to Phyrexia, one with the Multiverse, Atraxa, Vaultborn Tyrant Itali, which is how I'm able to cheese this one as an off-meta pick, is not every list is running the Italis. And then we've got the Bonnie Paul Clear Cutter. And you can kind of like mix and match whatever you have in your collection as far as like what threats to bring in. The Portal to Phyrexia a little bit less so. This one is really included pretty solidly as a win condition. And then Atraxa is pretty hard to get the value out of too, to replace. But yeah, just, you know, mill stuff, get a cheesy, really easy combo where you can even cast, you know, your cheap stuff for, you can cast your stuff cheaply off of the Founding the Third Path. And this one, I'm having a day, guys. Sorry, I just got done with the Arena Open, so I'm a little fried. So this one went 128 and 82 for a 61% win rate into Mythic. It's good against the mono black discard strategies, especially, and same with the Orsov discard deck. It is bad against mono red and Rakdos, so it's probably performing a little bit better at the end of the season, which this data is coming from, because the mono red and the Rakdos aggro players had already kind of gotten bored of the deck, and we started to see some more variation later into the season. So it may not be a great deck to start out on week 1, but definitely one to keep your eye on for, and just kind of know you might come up against it in the ladder. And so that one will be number 2. Number 3 here is Boros Tokens by Gothnak, and went 41 and 20 for 67%. And we've seen this archetype around for a little bit, so it's kind of a stretch to say that this was like a new one, but, you know, as we get a month into the set, some repetition is going to happen. So this is the deck that I was talking about that's running the Urbrask's Forge and the Caretaker's Talent instead of just going for the mono-white space, and leaning more heavily into like a Braid to counteract other people running the Urbrask's Forge, which then is kind of a dead card in the mono-white matchup. I mean, you can still shoot like a carrot cake, I guess, right? But is better against the mono red matchup because of being able to have more instant speed removal for the Rakdos Prowess and the mono red Prowess. So kind of a give and take there, right? So the good matchups are Boros Convoke because of the temporary lockdowns and the Sunfalls, mono red Prowess, as I mentioned, or mono red aggro. The mono black builds because of being able to counteract the discard off of the Caretaker's Talent, and then Celestia Rabbits. This does really well with the temporary lockdowns and the Sunfall as well. So the mono white build struggles a little bit more with the go wide of Celestia Rabbits because it's not running the temporary lockdowns in the main, but you could sideboard that to make it more advantageous if you're coming up against that, like I mentioned. For the bad matchups, though, similar to the mono white human or mono white control, this one struggles against Azorius control. So I was actually playing around with Azorius control because I was bumping into a lot of the Caretaker's Talent control decks. So if you're bumping into a lot of those, I think Azorius control is a pretty decent one. Can be a little bit hard to better later in the season after all of the mono red and Rakdos Prowess die down, but giving you an option if you're curious what is a good counter to this strategy. And Domain also works relatively well against this one. Again, they're be able to use their like leyline bindings to answer the Caretaker's Talent, and can give this deck a little bit more of a struggle than the mono white control build. And then last but not least is a fun deck. So this was one that was actually from a couple weeks ago. I meant to cover it during week 3 and just didn't get around to it. And so this one is Izzet Prowess by Garathiel. and went 37 and 21 for a 64% win rate. And it's very play versus draw. It's definitely much more favored when you start first rather than going second, more so than some other decks you might have played on the ladder. But it's good against mono red aggro, and it's good against Azorius control, which if we start to see more Azorius control come in to counteract some of the Caretaker's control builds, then especially in in Mythic, you might see this start to perform better depending on the matchup. But similar to the mono blue tempo build that I covered on Friday, it's good against mono red and Azorius control, which is kind of a niche spot to hit. But same it does well against the mono white control. So the deck that it's bad against, though, is the mono black discard. So it depends on if you're coming up against a lot of the mono black discard. This one does not have a lot of it needs every spell that it can get to be able to get that value to be able to trigger the prowess. And so this one, I've seen some lists running the Flood Caller and leaning a little bit more heavily into the Otter side of strategy, which is something to keep an eye on. But this one leaning more heavily into the Slick Shot Show Off, being able to protect this with Shore Up, right? We do have a little bit of Otters with the Storm Chaser's talent. Mockingbird basically gives us multiple copies of the Slick Shot Show Off, which is cool because it allows us to basically run 7 Slick Shots. Emberheart Challenger gives us some good dig. We have the Lightning Strike and the Shock, similar to mono red aggro, which can help us against Rakdos aggro if we're having to blow up their targets. Monstrous Rage for one of the best combat tricks in the game. Might of the Meek, despite having not very many synergies, mice specific, I should say, it still is a cycler and is replacing your Ancestral Anger and allows you to trigger your prowess for cheap. So this one also looks like it was potentially a best of 3 list adapted into best of 1, but it went 37 and 21 for a 64% win rate into Mythic in best of 1, and has a decent enough spread depending on your matchups, what you're experiencing on the ladder, that it could perform well. So that will be number 4. So remember to place your vote on the community tab. Tomorrow I'll be going over my more on meta best of 1, best of 3 meta review for week 5 of Bloomburrow, and we'll see what the early the new season kicks off with. And Tuesday will be the community deck techs, so you still have some time if you'd like to submit a deck for me to review and talk about. I will be picking 4 randomly from the decks that are submitted, and double submissions don't count. So because I can't review them all if we get too many. But thank you for submitting them. It's really great to see the community engaging and growing. And if you're new here, welcome. I do this every week. And Magic's my jam. I play way too much Magic. So, let's see. Oh, yeah. And then on Wednesday, the Arena Open, day 2, as I try to compete for $2,000. And day 2 draft 1 will be on Wednesday. So take care, everybody. Have a wonderful weekend. And I'll see you tomorrow for the review.